All right. I hope everyone had a great holiday, great Christmas. To those that celebrate with your friends and your family, I know I did. Very relaxing and definitely some good time off for sure. Let me open this camera up just a little bit. There we go. So you can see my pretty face. I know you guys all love that. So a few updates today, right? Big day today, but not really. I mean, in terms of Bitcoin, couple percentage point change. The miners took a very, very big hit, but in the context of what they've done since October, warranted. I'm going to get into that in a little bit. I'm also going to get into the pairs, Microstrategy, Riot, Mara, as well as where I'm going to start today. And that's with a post I believe I tweeted out. I don't even know if that's the right word anymore. X'd out, whatever. Yesterday, looking at this is the S&P 500 monthly chart. And again, folks, just a reminder, I'm no financial advisor. No one knows what's going to happen in these markets. I'm just giving you my opinion for educational purposes. Do your own research. That being said, what I'm looking at in front of me is really important in the context for everything else that I've been sharing for the last year, 2 years, for you, those of you that have been following me for that long. And really formulates a lot of the thesis in terms of why I'm so bullish at this point in the market where we are, because I look at where we've come from in two respects, right? When I visualize all the markets kind of on top of each other, whether it's S&P, the NASDAQ, the dollar. And I posted some of these charts over the last 6 months where I have all three of them lined up, and you can see a picture. You can see that there's a nature at which the markets move together, not a one-to-one correlation, but there certainly is a clear pattern, in my opinion, on the high time frame. And in this pattern that we're looking at here is what's called an expanded flat correction. And this is, again, a high time frame going back to 1995, okay, S&P 500 monthly. And, what we saw was coming out of March 2000 top, a pretty nasty correction, right? A, B, C, three-wave correction, A, B, C. And back in 07, it's game on, right? Much like Bitcoin 2021. Think about that. Okay, we're back. That was awful. That was a big drawdown in January 03, but now things are turning up and we're approaching previous all-time high, and we exceeded previous all-time high. Game on. Well, in fact, that's not what it was. It was game off, and the great financial crisis came afterwards, and we saw the next leg of this BC leg of this expanded flat correction in a 1, 2, 3, 4 subwave move to mark this C, and this C was lower than the previous A, and that's one of the hallmarks of these expanded flat corrections. And just when it really is now all over, okay, March 2009, the markets reverse. And they're coming out of, and again, this is just my opinion, folks. They're coming out of, and a lot of the way that these markets move are a function, in my opinion, of potential energy. And when you hear that term, like a coiled spring, that's what this pattern kind of illustrates, right? I mean, essentially, it's just one massive giant accumulation pattern with a very pronounced ranges, kind of like a spring being compressed, right? And there's extremes at both ends, and once that energy is kind of released, it's released, and depending on the potential energy behind that move is going to be a function, and that's called Hooke's law. That's the law elasticity, in essence, the force that's exerted on an elastic object. The force that's going to be released in the opposite direction is equal to or greater to the force that's exerted on it, whether that's, you're pressing in a spring or you're pulling back a rubber band. And so that's how I visualize, and we see that in markets too, in my opinion, and that's why I'm showing you this chart, okay? And so where are we today? Markets now, and I love using Fibonacci. Fibonacci is found in everything. It's found in nature. It's found in everything in our daily lives, whether we realize it or not. And it's found in financial markets as well. Let me move this over here. And just look at the beauty of some of these Fibonacci levels and how they were respected coming out of this expanded flat, right? A, B, C, and then come out of it, and we essentially get our first 168, very common Fibonacci extension. We get our first bit of resistance. Now, does it fail and does the market puke? No, it doesn't. It simply consolidates, in this type of flagging structure prior to breaking out and making its move to fresh all-time highs. Where does it then make its next significant stop? Well, it makes its next really significant stop after it exceeds the 200% extension. You get a 1, 2 double bottom, and then challenges this 300% extension, and then we get the COVID blowout bottom. And as you'll notice, even with COVID, you never got a monthly close below this 200% extension, right? I mean, look at that candle. It gets under, but it closes back above. You get a retest on the next candle. Sorry if those arrows don't do it justice. Let me zoom in a little bit so you can see it better. And then we get coming out of this 4 correction, this minor 4, the move to all-time highs. And so here we are in a massive V-shaped recovery. That's a V-shape. And we are now challenging the extension to where it stopped prior, and that is the 4618 extension of the original expanded flat top, C bottom, and we're now just consolidating above it. And I don't even know what the S&P did today, down 0.18 or something. I didn't see the close, but we're literally consolidating at it, looking to break out into this 5th. That's what this pattern is showing me beautifully. And so that's my full expectation. And so that's the context at which I'm looking at Bitcoin, because this is global finance to me. And now let's take a look at my favorite asset in all of global finance, and that's Bitcoin. And so what has Bitcoin been doing? Well, Bitcoin, much like the S&P 500 monthly chart, went through a massive expanded flat correction, and proportional to in time, this chart is pretty close to what we're looking at there. And what do I mean by that? The distance from here to the bottom C here is similar in proportion to the last chart I shared, compared to the distance of bottom C to where it hit its 3rd wave peak on the other chart. And so I only share that to illustrate the power of this type of compression that's been going on. And if and when this gets released, I fully expect it to get released with a lot of energy, with us moving towards all-time highs and far beyond that very, very quickly. And so that kind of informs a little bit of the background as to why I continue not to see any major pullbacks along the way. I'm going to go to my next chart and further illustrate why I'm saying that. And so when we look to compare, and I see a lot of comparisons to 2016 or 2017 or this year, that year, where the comparison that I don't see very often at all is the one that's right in front of us. It's the massive accumulation range that you all have seen me post for a long time, that very closely mimics what we saw prior to the expansive move in September of 2020. And so let's just really quickly revisit this. And this is the second reason why, again, I just don't see a major pullback in the cards soon. I see a major pullback coming from much, much higher than where we are. And again, part of that reason is we literally just started the expansive phase of this market. And this accumulation range goes back to May 2022. So again, if we think of these markets through the lens of the negotiation, the accumulation that went on for that long, a breakout, and you get a sign of strength, and you're backing up and you're backing up, and literally this breakout, this expansive move has just started. And so those looking for proper retests lower, that would not mesh with what this structure is telling me. What this structure is telling me, in that accumulation is long gone, and the market is now in an expansive mode. And so where we sit today? Well, we sit, let me get rid of that. Have literally been consolidating, just consolidating kind of in this triangle structure. I'm expecting it to break out. That's my expectation. Doesn't mean we can't get little shakeouts and pivots and fake outs along the way, but that's my full expectation. And so now let's get to what possibly I could see on lower time frames in terms of those possibilities. Now, this is a 4-hour chart. Let me back out of this a little bit so you can kind of see my overall counts here. You know, coming out of the correction, minor 1, 2, I think 3, 4. We're concluding 4 right now, and on our way to the fifth of this major third. Okay, and so what do I expect to happen from here on out? Let's see. Couple possibilities. Possibility number 1, we're making this, you know, A, B, C, D, E type of triangle correction, and we're concluding E here, and liftoff is next. That's possibility number 1. Possibility number 2 is, you know, we've got A, and then a 1, 2, 3 kind of B, and then we're making a 1, 2, and we haven't really finished this third move, and we're going a little bit lower. And so that's also a possibility. What would be the downside targets in that scenario? You know, anything above 40,566 would respect this correction and its angles and be, in fact, a higher low. And so that's what I'd be looking for on the downside. So that's where we are. That's kind of where we are. Let me move on to the next chart. And let me get rid of that. And let's pull up some Riot. I did go shopping today. I like big red days to add to the long-term positions. And folks, just a couple, I got a few questions on you know, options and things like that. I do use options. I use them in these expansive market phases. They're a smaller percentage of the overall portfolio, and you have to realize that you could lose every penny that you're investing when you're buying an options contract. And so it is, again, a smaller percentage. I hold a lot of stock from far lower. And so I'm happy to look at it like a gamble, if you will. So just a note on that. Now let's take a look at what we're dealing with Riot here on the weekly chart. And so on the weekly, we've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 up weeks in a row, 6 green weeks in a row. And so, what's the problem here? I don't really see one. I see a consolidation week. Let me pull up the EMAs. This is a weekly chart, and just kind of see where we finished here. We finished this week just above the 5-week EMA. Okay. And so this is still an uptrend. This is still an uptrend. If we go back to the last area of interest for me, late fall 2020, what did we see after it made its 2 correction, minor 1, 2? I submit we're somewhere kind of in this range. We saw several tests of this 5 all the way up till it hit minor 3. So how many did we see? We saw 1, 2 red weeks before minor 3 concluded. And so this is our first red week. To be expected. Nothing unusual here at all. We got the breakout of this major downtrend, and we've pivoted, and this is just the name of the game. That's just the name of the game. I think a lot of folks got probably stop losses triggered today that may have jumped on the miners late. So that's what I think happened. Next, Riot BTC. Riot has been lagging behind Mara. There's no doubt about it. I'm not the person to tell you fundamentally which miner I think is better or worse. I'm a pure technical swing trader with these miners during what I believe are expansive phases of the market. And this is a chart that I've shared several times illustrating Riot denominated in Bitcoin. And much like we saw back in 2020, again, this is no guarantee this is going to happen this time, just because this is the way the pattern played out last time, but I am seeing a lot of similarities. And so kind of coming out of its correction bottom in 2020 against Bitcoin, which is November 10th of 2020, we saw 1, 2, 3, 4 type 5 wave type moves. But this is kind of the mean, this trend line that I have up, and you just have a series of negotiations with this mean, right? Undershoot and then back above it. And so that's what you're going to get, given we see the same type of outperformance as we typically have seen. That's the given. That's the assumption, excuse me. And so where are we right now? We're just kind of seeing the same thing, I believe. We made this low in November, so Monday 13th of 2023, and again, one kind of coming back, right? Just that's what we got to expect. This is the mean, and that's going to be the type of movement, and so that's where we are. This horizontal rectangle that I've got depicted is a very important area. Why is it important? Because it going back all the way to October 2018, this area really demarcated what segment of the market you were in. Support, and so outperformance against Bitcoin, blasted through it, underperformance against Bitcoin, kind of coming back up here. We saw, sorry about that. We saw this inverse head and shoulders move. Inverse head and shoulders, tried to get above that important area, rejected, tried again in the fall, and this is where it breached it. breached it in the fall, and went on to make incredible highs against Bitcoin. So where are we kind of this year and last year? This area is very important, right? Couple failures, no, failure, bumping up against it, broke out against it in the summer of 2023 and made a nice move against Bitcoin. And then we made an ABC correction, failure, and reversal, higher low, higher low, higher low, coming out of it with one attempt early December, failure, really blasted out of it last week. And now we're kind of getting a back test, if you will, of that area. I really would love to see this thing gap up and revert back up next week. That's going to be something I'll be keeping a close eye on for sure. Next, let's go to Mara. The Mara weekly chart just looks fantastic. Just looks absolutely fantastic any way you want to look at it. Mara has been a very, very powerful name, maybe the most powerful in the stock market, in my opinion. And this is the weekly chart that I've been sharing. And again, we just see such clear symmetry in terms of how these moves are developing compared to how they developed in the past. Again, that's no guarantee, but a lot of not too many coincidences here for me, where we see a very interesting market structure is around this rectangle. Okay, we see very interesting and telling information regarding the structure of the market when Mara is above it and below it. See that? Oh, can't get over, and then we get over, and then it's off. Same thing when looking at the January low. Where did it go? Where did it stop? Well, it hit the top of this channel and it stopped right where you'd expect it to stop. This important area that acted as support and resistance on several occasions. And so where are we today? Well, the next level that's more important and more relevant to today's market structure is this level right here. That level right there. Everything above it, support, failure, 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 and we broke through. So for Mara investors, this is exactly what you want to see. This is exactly what I want to see. Now, the ultimate question is, do we get a retest? Do we get a retest of that area prior to resumption, which is my base case? I don't know. I don't think we do, but that's always a possibility. If we look back to this important area back in 2020, did we get a retest of that area? We didn't. No. Important areas, I always concede. Important levels that people are looking to get tested and buy, in my opinion, typically don't get tested. And so much like looking back in December, we had one red week and it didn't get to that level prior to going. I think there's a good chance that the downside on the miners was what we saw today. If anything, maybe a little bit of a pull Monday, Tuesday, but I'm not expecting much more than that. I really am not, given where Bitcoin is in relation to its correction, which I believe it's towards the end, which is also why Mara has been outperforming. The miners have been outperforming because of, in my mind, where Bitcoin is in its corrective cycle of expansion. And the miners can sniff it out, investors can sniff it out. And so that's what I believe is going on. All right. Next is the Mara BTC pair. Now, this one I went over in my last video, and it's playing out as I talked about in the video. I mean, I talked about, this is a daily chart. I talked about these, 5-wave movements, and we nailed this third, right? We got up to 3, and now it's correcting against Bitcoin. And even if we were to get something like that prior to a next move up, that would be completely healthy. And just to throw this out there, testing this trend line doesn't mean Mara's going to be negative next week. It could be. That just means that there could be a week, 2 weeks, a few days where Bitcoin outperforms Mara. That's all that means. This is Bitcoin denominated in Mara, much like we saw, as I referenced in the video I did last week, much like we saw with that same pattern coming out of the correction lows in November of 2020, right? We had 1, 2, 3, 4. This trend line acted like the mean, and we've got periods of crazy outperformance and consolidation against it. Outperformance, consolidation against it. So could this also mean that money starts rotating into Riot? I don't know. Potentially. But this is one heck of a move, and I like seeing strength in I like seeing strength in names. I like seeing strength in names. And so is this now a fundamentally better miner than it was 4 years ago? I don't know. But if it is, and that's why capital's kind of pouring into it, then could we get a move up and out of this range and challenge the top of that range? Why not? Why not? That's a range that Mara BTC has been in before. Okay. So that's also a possibility as well. And and I'm saying that in terms of maybe it doesn't get outperformed by other miners from now, given the extent of its move to date, right? That's a heck of a move. Heck of a move. So I don't know. That's just pure speculation on my part. All right. Next is Microstrategy. Microstrategy chart is looking, I mean, it's looking fantastic. We are in the midst of we made a year-to-date high yesterday. Obviously had a pullback today, but this to me is just calling is pure expansion mode. We consolidated for 1, 2, 3 weeks over the 382 extension, okay, of high to low, right? That extension. And now I believe it's going to continue its expansive move. Again, during these expansive moves, we have seen, you know, look at that red candle, red candle, red candle. But the dominant trend is up, up, up with pullbacks, and the pullbacks are violent along the way. I wouldn't claim today's was very violent. What was it, 5, 6%, something like that down? So from a structural standpoint, let me just take one more look at something. Because again, the important level when you look at the tail of this market has been that price action in that rectangle, where, right, over, undershoot, fake out, no, kind of come back out, bump your head up against it, kind of coming back here, bump your head up against it, and then power through it. And we already kind of had a retest of that area. Could it come back down again? Sure it could. But the probabilities are telling me that more upside is coming, and that's how I'm seeing it. And so what else informs that? What else informs that thesis? Well, the MSTR BTC pair does. This isn't one I share very often. So let me pull that up. Okay, man, Bitcoin was down 1.5% today. That really isn't a lot. That really isn't a lot. Okay, so here's Microstrategy against Bitcoin, denominated against Bitcoin, and this chart, I love this chart. I really do. Why do I love this chart? Because it's been very telling. It's been very telling. During Bitcoin's wave 3, macro wave 3 peak right here, MicroStrategy against Bitcoin hit its all-time high since MicroStrategy started purchasing Bitcoin. Okay. And so what you had following that was a series of, so when MicroStrategy started purchasing Bitcoin, you had, here was the initial low. Then you had the initial high. Then you had a higher low, you had a higher high, you had a higher low, and then you had this kind of wedge breakout to the upside, making a higher high. That market clearly was designed for telling you that MicroStrategy was in outperformance mode, series of higher highs against higher lows. Next, what do we see? We saw the first break of market structure with this low. Okay, that low breached that low, and so now market structure has changed. And I've always kind of been of the school that MicroStrategy is probably more indicative of institutional interest in Bitcoin than we can derive from Bitcoin itself. And why do I say that? Well, when just looking at this chart, when Bitcoin topped out in the fall of, or the spring, excuse me, of 2021, the MicroStrategy pair here was kind of calling its bluff, saying, all right, the trend is now down. And so what do I mean by that? We had a lower low, we had a lower high, we had a lower low, we had a lower high, and then we had a lower low. And then what happened? Well, we had our first change of market structure, higher high. And then we had a subsequent higher low, higher high, higher low. And now we're in the midst of, generally speaking, what are bullish structures? You've got this major flag, broke out of that, consolidated into flagging structure recently. Had been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 weeks of consolidating against Bitcoin. No surprise, he sold $650 million in shares and bought more Bitcoin. So that explains the consolidation against it. When miners are breaking out, why is a MicroStrategy breaking out? Well, now kind of makes a little bit more sense. And so following that announcement, no surprise, you get a breakout, given all that selling pressure has subsided, and the fact that they own more Bitcoin, so your per share value in Bitcoin terms is now more Bitcoin than it was prior. And so we saw this week a breakout against Bitcoin, not surprising at all. And so my expectations for this pair would be at a minimum 0.0197 Bitcoin. And for the wave 3, the minor wave 3 top that I'm expecting within the next 2-3 months, 0.026 is in the cards against Bitcoin. So what does that mean? That means that Bitcoin's $100,000, you could see a $2,600 MicroStrategy. That's what that means. And so that's the video, folks. I felt really inclined to go through the pairs today, given what's the bloodbath in the miners today. But we got to keep it in perspective, right? We don't go from here to here without doing this. And especially when you have these Bitcoin miners that can make moves like this, you're going to always get, right? I mean, that's what it's going to be going up. And it's going to be very, very difficult to try to trade in and out of them. I can't do that. I'm not good enough. I simply can add on weakness and ride out the trend. And so the next few months, I think, are setting up to be pretty special. We shall see. Hope you have a great rest of the weekend. I won't be doing another market video. I've got family coming into town this weekend. I'm going to put this on my YouTube channel as well. So for those listening, this is kind of the weekend market update as well for the YouTube fam. Take care. Have a great weekend. Talk to you soon.